Hello, my sunshines, and welcome back to the podcast. This is a new season that we're very, very excited about because we're doing something a little different this season. This season, we have some of my fabulous friends coming on as guests, and I have some really interesting people around me who know a lot of really cool things. So I want to share that with you this season. So there are a lot of surprises that are going to come. But my first guest, I'm very excited about because she's someone I've known for a while. And she is very special to me and has a lot of very good information that you really won't get anywhere else. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. It's really about money. It's about understanding how money affects us, about how to manage our money, and what happens when we don't to our self-esteem. So I'm going to introduce her now. Today's guest is a powerhouse entrepreneur, twin mom, and the founder of DG Accounting Agency, a fast-growing remote firm with a team of 16 dedicated to bringing clarity and confidence to small business finances. She leads with heart, balancing bold leadership with real-life motherhood, and has built a company culture rooted in authenticity, integrity, and sustainable growth. She's on a mission to help business owners understand their numbers so they can make confident decisions without the overwhelm. Please welcome Diana Gleason. Hi.
Hey, thank you for
glad you're here.
I'm so excited to be here.
You are the first guest for a reason.
What is the reason?
Because so much of the stress that we have when I talk to people is about money. And you have so many great ideas about money and great experiences around money that I thought this would be a great place to start with the new year. Everybody's got their ideas about what they're going to do differently. And I think this is a really good start.
Yeah.
So tell us about you. Tell us about who Diana Gleason is. What's the story?
Diana Gleason is... So I'm a former professional dancer.
Mm-hmm.
Always like to give people that insight. Accounting, bookkeeping, helping people manage their money was not something I learned in school. I actually always kind of laugh when I'm like, I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in dance, by the way.
It's a nice little feather in your cap these days.
And so my dance career came to a halt when I had a hip injury combined with twin pregnancy. And my whole life shifted. And what happened was I lost a sense of identity, which I think is really common for young moms, you know, twofold young moms, but then also when you've been raised a dancer from 3 years old and you embody being or associating your worth with something that you do. Unfortunately, that does have a fallout when you don't do that anymore.
And you have a big twin belly that you can't dance around with.
Yes.
On top of everything else.
Yes. And they were not easy twins. They came at 32 weeks. We had an 8-week NICU stay, and they had lots of developmental delays in the beginning. So I was really in the throes of motherhood. At the time, because I had the big twin belly, I took a remote bookkeeping job because my friend, actually was like my husband's, I won't even call him a friend. It was like my husband's acquaintance.
You fell into it.
I fell into it.
Mm-hmm.
He needed somebody. I had a skill and I could work from home in my laptop, with my laptop in my bed. And he really taught me the bones of bookkeeping. And I fell in love with numbers. And I was always mathy.
Yeah.
Like if I hadn't gone into dance, maybe I would have become an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
It just, you know, the passion took first. And so I spent like 6 years working remote, part-time to full-time for this firm. And that is around the time I met Dr. Deborah Brown.
And how did we meet? Tell everybody.
Sure. So in 2019, that's where I was in my life. I was a twin mom in the throes of, like, I think I had like two, they're going to be 11. So I don't, you go back, 2, 4, 5-year-old, something around there. I had crippling anxiety, depression, frequent panic attacks. I felt terrible inside of my own body, and I was trying to help myself in any way that I could. And I was unwilling to live this way anymore. It had to get better. I had to find a way. And so a friend of mine in my twin mom support group suggested that I contact you. And she thought, and I knew that she and I were a lot alike. And I thought, well, if this person helped her, then she could probably help me. And so I went and I visited Deb at her she was not brownstone then.
No,
It was
it was
a
a long
time
time
ago.
ago in a crappy little office in the middle of nowhere. Yes.
And as I would do well in therapy, she would be like, and now we can push you to 2 weeks.
And you would never go.
She would be like 2 weeks. And I'd be like, nope, I still need to talk to you
Yep.
every week, even if I'm having a good week. Let's just keep talking. And what happened through the process of therapy for me was self-awareness, realizing that, there were things I was doing that were all of my own causing. But I wasn't aware to them to be able to fix them. And then also external things, setting boundaries and starting to take control of my life and realizing, what do I even want out of my life? And who am I? And what makes me happy? And it was a space for me to, like, as you would always say, like, okay, we'll take that box off the shelf and, like, shit's gonna fly out everywhere.
Pandora's box.
And then we're going to put it all away
them all.
nice, and we're going to put it on the shelf. Deb helped me open every single box and put everything back away nicely. And so in that time when I was deep in therapy, I quit my job.
Yes. And it was remarkable. I mean, you were one of my absolute favorite patients. We're not supposed to say that, but I'm saying it because it was so much fun because you took everything that I gave and you ran with it. And in the podcast, we always say that we're like, I'm going to give you a ton of stuff and you sort out what works for you. But you were really good at saying, like, this doesn't work for me anymore. How do I change it? And that's wonderful because you actually saw results, but you actually worked for it too.
I worked for it hard.
And it was hard.
And it would be like, I would go to therapy with the journal of like, okay, now what am I supposed to do before I see you again? And I would come back and be like, I did it. And this is what happened. Or this is how I felt. Still, even I'll be like, here, listen to all the stuff I just wrote in my journal because it'll help you understand what's going on in my brain.
And then what was the flip side of that, or what was the flip side of that, was there was a perfectionism, right?
Absolutely.
As many entrepreneurs and as many successful people have, and I'm guilty too, is that there's a perfectionism and I'm going to do everything right. And that's been the fun of working with you later, was that all of a sudden it was, I don't have to be perfect anymore. And I just have to be whatever I am.
Yeah.
That's been fun.
And also forgetting, because sometimes the rat race of being an entrepreneur and having your own company and managing people and clients and all the things that throws at us, you start to, again, lose a sense of self.
Yes. We have to go back to the basics.
You have to go back to the basics of who am I? What makes me happy? Why did I even build this thing to start with? And are my actions still aligning with what I'm saying makes me happy? And even I'll be very honest right now, I'm in a season of like, whoa, I got to sift stuff out of the box again and go, I'm like a workaholic right now, and that's not making me very happy. So I need to work on that,
Why is it so easy to fall into that trap, though? When you think about, we go from, wow, this is really exciting and this is really good, and then the next thing you know, we're overwhelmed again. What do you believe that you've learned through this process, that why does that keep happening? Why do we throw ourselves in so heavily and then have to pay the price?
I think the perfectionism piece is there for sure. Also, I've been working with an executive coach who is an organizational psychologist. So she comes in and diagnoses your business in a way that you do with people. And through a tool that I've learned with her, I've learned that a need that I have, that I need to feel every day to feel really good in my life, is that I need to be succeeding and achieving. Oh, so that's how that happens really fast.
Yeah, that's a
you're
great
looking at
point.
your business and you're going, oh, I could just reach one more little thing and one more little thing. And if we just hired one more person and all these people want to work with me and I want to say yes to them all. And then all of a sudden the plate is like 3 plates worth. And then we got to go,
and I do it too. And I do it too. And I'm looking at Emily because Emily here knows, because she's subject to that all the time. She's like, what idea does she have now? And they're learning that it usually pays off, but it's the hell to get through to that point. But I do think that's what it is. I think it's the entrepreneurial mindset. I think some of us have that idea of creating and growing, but we forget that it costs us something.
Yes.
So,
and for every yes,
you have to
say no to something else. And if you don't start saying no to something else, then you've said yes to everything. And then you're the person you're saying no to, your self-care. And then that's when we have a problem.
But think about what has happened historically for you and even for me when we've said no to people. How does that always go?
Not always well.
Not always well, right?
Which is why we get scared if we don't say no.
Yes.
Right? But if we're grounded and authentic to ourselves, then we know what no's are the right no's to say, and we have to be okay with those.
And that's the thing about boundaries that we talk about all the time, is that boundaries are not for anybody else, they're for you. It's the idea that you need to take care of yourself. And people don't realize that taking care of yourself means that you become the most important person in the room sometimes.
Right.
Not in an ego way, but in a what am I feeling? And I think that's some of the best work that I've seen you do, is the idea that you can stop and go, wait, what's that feeling? What does that feeling telling me? And should I listen to it instead of plugging forward?
Right. And why do I feel so bad? And what needs to change so that I feel better?
But that it's also temporary.
And it's temporary, and this too shall pass.
Yes, that's one of the things I am so thrilled with you, is watching you be able to go from episodes that were very long. You know, you would have weeks where you would be really down and out, and
Yeah.
you were really not feeling great. And now I see that when a stressor comes, it might still knock you over, but you get up a lot quicker.
Yes.
And you use all the tools and you go, okay, it's just a moment.
Just a moment.
That gift in my life changed everything. So I share it with everybody.
Yeah.
Because when you can say, okay, this is really bad right now versus this is really bad, or I'm really bad.
Right.
Which is where I want to go with you about the idea of shame and how
Yes.
that connects to money.
Yes. And what I will say is a feather in your cap is that you're really good at working with your patients and helping us see how far we have come, because so much in mental health, and I'm open about my mental health. I struggle big time with anxiety and depression and panic episodes. And I'll take myself back to like, I did all this. I literally probably said it to Deb last week. I've done all this work to change my life and make it so great, and I've made it a mess again. And she's like, no, you haven't. This is just a minute.
It's just today.
It's just today.
Yeah.
So talking about money and shame, I've coined myself the judgment-free bookkeeper.
Oh, I love that.
And I did that very early on when I was working on my elevator pitch, right? I had a couple of clients that followed me out the door from the other place, and when I left out on my own. And the first thing I started working on was, when I get on a discovery call, to say, who am I? What am I going to do? And what most importantly is, what does this person want to feel when they work with me? And what do I want them to feel when they work with me? And so what I learned very quickly in dealing with people and their money, and this from a business sense or even a personal sense, right? I work mainly in the business sector, but this 100% applies to your personal relationship with money. There's a ton of crossover,
right?
Even as an entrepreneur, it's personal stuff. Is that opening up your world of finance, which will include, if you have investment accounts, your day-to-day checking, operations, savings, debt, loans, things like that. It's basically like looking at somebody naked. That's how people feel about it.
Absolutely. And going through the process of opening a new business is that I had to expose everything about my personal life. And it was those moments where I went, oh, what are they going to think of me if they see this, right? So you work with a lot of small business where I would imagine those personal and professional are linked.
Yep.
And how do you help people get away from the shame that's associated with their financial picture, their nakedness financially?
I try to debunk it from the beginning, and I will attest a lot of this from the therapy I've done, because I feel like I've some days I think I therapy a lot of my clients.
You probably
do.
What
I mean, in different ways, but listen, we can't fix something that we don't know about. That's number one. Most people don't look at their finances square in the eye on a week to week, dare I say day to day, but week to week, month to month. Most people want to shove that stuff in the box and not look at it until it's time to do something about it for taxes. And that's not really helpful.
Right.
In your personal life, or if you were a business owner, it's not really helpful to you. So I always, number one, I will tell people, when we sit down to look at what's been going on and what changes we need to make, and maybe a plan to fix this debt that we're feeling shameful about, or the top line income that we're feeling shameful about, or the maybe impulse spending that we are doing because it's filling a need that we're lacking.
And that's the credit card debt that we all have and that we're all attached to in a very negative way.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If we don't understand the why did it get this way? That's number one part. It's mental. It has nothing to do about your
Right.
actual physical actions of what you're doing with money. It's mental. Why am I not making enough money? Why am I spending with above and beyond my means? Why do I have all of this debt that I've made no plan to pay off? If I keep doing the same thing that I keep, like, it's just like with therapy. If your actions and your behavior don't change, then nothing's going to change. It's going to stay the same.
But don't you think there's a hopelessness in that? I talk to people who just accept their financial situation and it's interesting. I think this is the difference between an entrepreneur and a person who works a job is that I think we refuse to accept it, that I've spent most of my life with not much money and I always refuse to accept it. My goal is there's always going to be more for me. There's
Right.
going to be something else. But I think some people don't necessarily have that spirit about, oh, they're never going to get underneath. They're never going to get away from it. I'm always just going to pay the minimum payments. I'm never ever going to not have debt. And people I talk to kind of accept that. And I think that's accepting that you're always going to struggle in a way. But you have a story where you came out from a debt situation.
Yeah.
So you're kind of living proof that you don't get
You
stuck
don't
in
have
that.
to. And mine might have been a little extreme, but so I grew up in a house where money was hard. And so what the thing that you also, like, for the listeners, I want you to really spend some time after you listen to this episode and think about the money stories you were fed as a child that you had zero control over. What I was taught was money is hard. My parents were blue collar workers. My mom was a hairdresser and, had grown up in a trailer park, one of 7. And didn't have much. She met my dad. They got married at 20. He was a pressman. And they lived in a little apartment and they lived paycheck to paycheck. They literally didn't put money away for their retirement until I went to college. So we lived in a scarcity mindset in my home. Money was hard, was something it's hard to make. Look at how hard mom works and hustles to make the extra money. Dad goes to work, comes home. He has that W-2 salary of, it is what it is. And this is what we have to make. And then how do we make that stretch? So I was constantly on a budget of, oh, it's time for school to start. So we want new clothes for school. Well, what hand-me-downs do we have from whomever?
Yeah.
And then we have $100 to go to the mall and spend. And that includes on the book bag and the school supplies. And maybe you got an outfit out of that. I don't know. Depends where we were shopping. And I grew up dancing in a very fancy dance studio where people had parents who were anesthesiologists and cardiologists, right?
Yes.
And so money was really easy for a lot of my friends in their big houses.
Or they didn't have to think about it at all as children.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a thing. And I was constantly told how expensive the dancing was. The costume bill, that I wouldn't be able to do this if my mom didn't do so much extra. And I was always so grateful and appreciative for what we had. But I remember a really specific time in my life where a dance teacher, who I would later call my dance mom, because she really mentored me in that way, came to pick me up. And she was married to a predominant attorney in South Jersey and they just swam in money. It's
Right. From your
from my
perspective,
lens,
sure.
okay, from my
absolutely.
lens. And she came with her Jaguar to pick me up in my townhouse.
Mhm.
And I remember just feeling a certain kind of way. Shame of like, wow, I don't have what you have. And that must mean something about me.
Isn't that the problem with shame? Shame is that there's something wrong with me that suddenly becomes apparent, and money is a great way to illuminate that.
Yeah.
Think about, I know I had a patient that went to Miami and she didn't have great clothes, but she was so excited to take a vacation. And what she didn't realize was that Miami was filled with these clubs and she was very excited to go. And then she's like, I'm in there with cheap shoes. And I'm in there with this dress on, and it ruined her whole vacation because it was the idea of, I don't fit here. It's a big one. Money does that.
It does that. And what I think the even more important part is that how much of that, right? That shame that I had as a little girl of, wow, like it's happy inside of my house. Like, I don't feel any kind of
You're not
way.
starving,
I'm not starving.
right?
There's food. I have extracurriculars. I have a happy life. I don't have all the extras. Like, when I had to get buy a car, it was, a really old beat up
Right.
one where, some friends got bought nice new ones. But we take those stories and those beliefs with us into our adult life. And then when we become in charge of our money, right? They release us into the world somewhere around the time that you're 18,
Right.
whether you've graduated from high school, headed to college, depending on what your agreement was with your parents and what they were going to pay for and what you were going to pay for. For me, it was post-college. My parents kept a really tight leash on me of, you know, you have to work and make $100 a week. Now, I went to college in, you know, early 2000. So I made $100 a week that paid my rent.
Right.
They paid my food, and I had very little extra for stuff. And once I graduated from college, Deb, you know how fast I got a credit card.
We got them very quick. I know. I think I had mine in college.
Right.
And what happens when you're let loose in the world
It's
I
not
was the
good.
same. I lived in hand-me-downs and like mom's haircuts. So yeah, when I got my first credit card, my thought was the world is mine.
It is mine. What do I want? And I'm going to go buy it. And I can remember being on the phone with Macy's, and somehow it was like I opened a store card and a Visa card. Like you could have two. And I was like, why are there two bills and not one? And the lady's trying to explain it to me. And I'm like, I can't even comprehend. And so in a very short amount of time, from the time I was like 22 to 25, I racked up about $20,000 worth of debt. Plus I had student loans that were like another 16 that I was paying every month. And I met this fabulous guy that I moved in with, and we were on the path of getting engaged. Now, of course, we're married and been married a really long time. And he was financially smart.
Okay. He was a little ahead of the curve.
He was ahead of the curve. He didn't make the same mistakes I did. He stayed living at home with his parents as long as he could. He got a sales job where he made great commission, and he saved all of his money.
So what did you feel when you met him and you started to put those finances together? Because I just got married, you know this, and you have that moment where all of a sudden we're grown-ups and we're going, okay, what do you have and what do I have?
Right.
And all that shame comes up if the other person has more.
Yes.
Right?
And Matt, you know, Matt's my husband. He, it was I remember just laying it all out. Like, listen, I'm having a panic attack because I have $20,000 in credit card debt. Like, I don't have money to move out. Like, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and it is stressing me out. And I love you, and I think we want to share our lives together, but like, you may not want to love me because I'm a mess over here.
Wow.
And you have $50,000 saved in the bank to buy a house, you know, and maybe you're going to think differently about me or not want to marry me because I'm coming like such disaster.
And that's everything. That's exactly, I think, such a great story about how money makes us feel about ourselves.
Mhm.
That a lot of us who, I know I never had money, but I always tried to create this impression that I was very successful because it's always like, be the thing you want to be, right? But inside you feel like a fraud. Because you see other people who do have it. And I think that's the fun thing that happens when you get older and you do become more successful, is that you come into yourself in a different way because you finally start to realize, wow, it was never really about the money, but the money was this symptom that also made me feel bad along with other things.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
And he was fine. He figured it out with you.
He was like, okay, so we're going to figure this out. He helped me do some research, and I entered into a credit, I have a consolidation program.
Mhm.
So they basically go and they negotiate with all your credit card companies and say, okay, the $20,000 you owe, we're going to make it 12, and we're going to put you on a monthly plan. And also now you're not allowed to have any credit cards until this is all paid off. And that was what I did. And I was, like I said, I was like 25-ish, 6. It wasn't until maybe 3 years ago, and now I'm 42, for just so we know how much time has passed. 3 years ago until I started using a credit card again. Not because I wasn't able to, because I was scared to death.
And I know we've talked about it with growing the business. And part of growing a business, and we both know this, is that a lot of times you have to take out lines of credit. You have to have credit cards because it's just the dynamic of growing your business. Nobody can just throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at you.
And most people don't have a big savings account to just fuel a business with either.
But your fear was what?
My fear was in that moment of using the credit card again.
Mm-hmm.
My fear was that it would happen all over again.
And why would it happen all over again?
Because my story to myself was, I'm not good at credit cards. Look what I did. I had proof of what I did and what happened and how I felt, right? So no, don't touch that ever again. Now though, happy to report 3 years into using a credit card is that I use it every month and I pay it off every month in full. And now I'm using like the credit card points game where I get to fly for free and use it to my advantage. There is a smart, healthy, productive way to use credit in your life and in your business. You just have to be, what's the word I'm looking for?
Prudent.
Yeah, and and accountable to not overspending. And that, I think, even further through is that if you're in a situation in your life where you're feeling shameful about money, that's where you have to go and look. Why am I feeling shameful about money? Most people are living beyond their means. And also the people that you're looking at that you think are doing so much better than you are also living beyond their means.
I love this lesson, and I want to scream it to the rooftops that everything that you see on social media, and we've all said this, but people don't internalize it. And I can tell you in my job, I've seen thousands of people, right? And I know the image that they present to the world versus the image that I see, which is the reality. And the differences in that are just huge. And that's part of why I wanted to have you and why I want to have guests, is because a lot of the people that I'm going to be bringing on this season are very successful people from all kinds of ways, from the way that they live their life, the way that their family is, their financial success, their business. Everybody that we're bringing on is visibly from the outside remarkable, right? And also remarkable in the backstory, but there is a backstory.
Yeah.
There isn't this idea that people are bloomed into these perfect flowers, is that we work at it every single day to create this sort of reflection of who we are on the outside, but it's a lot deeper than that. And I think about it when we were talking about relationships, is that I think it inhibits people from being honest about themselves. And I have women especially who are ordering on Amazon and not letting their husband see it, or they're shopping where they're leaving it in the car, right? So that's that shame. And so we're talking about business, we're talking about entrepreneurship, but we're also talking about the personal behaviors that we have in our homes with our partners, because that's a level, and I did it. I was married for a long time back in the day, and I did the thing where the car stayed out, the bag stayed in the car, and then I would just bring it in when I knew he wasn't home, because it wasn't worth the fight. And I look at that now and go, because he had a point.
Right.
Because I was spending too much money and I was being shameful about that behavior.
Right.
So now when we talk about this, is that if you can point to that shame, it'll also point you in the direction of, how do I change it? And like you said, why am I doing it in the first place?
Why am I doing it in the first place? That's more often than not, people that are struggling with money aren't examining. And this is something you've taught me. It's like we pick out you go, if you don't like it, pick it out and examine it and look at it. It's the same thing with your money, right? If something doesn't feel good, well, then we need to examine why it doesn't feel good and get to the root cause and fix it, and then align our actions accordingly.
Because it's not black and white, because it isn't like, oh, you can never have a credit card again, or you can never spend money again. For me, there's this little coping strategy in spending that I've always had, and I've always had to work on, because I know that we all have things that make us feel good. Right. And money is sort of a ticket to that. Everybody says that all the time, if I only had money. But for me, I could go to Marshall's and I could have the best time at Marshall's, just an hour at Home Goods, right? But I think there's something very therapeutic, and I don't want to ever tell people your money just has to all be saved and your money has to all go away.
There has to be fun money.
There has to be fun money. So what is a good strategy for people to sort of understand how to not keep it black and white? Because I have people that say in the new year, I'm going to save all my money and I'm not going to do this, but then you end up suffering.
Yeah.
How do you find a middle ground in that? Because you've had to do that as you've grown your business.
And my life. And it goes back to knowing your numbers. So you have to sit down and say, how much is my household bringing in cash? Not my salary is 140 after taxes, after 401k, after the health insurance.
What it says on the bottom line of the paycheck.
What gets deposited in the bank? How much cash are we bringing into the house let's just look at a month, in 1 month. Now, what are our hard expenses that we cannot change? Most of the time it's our mortgage, our utilities, maybe we're paying for school or daycare, etc. Food, gas, car payment, right? Like we all have things that we have to have and pay for. Okay, so we've got that. Now we've got the expenses. What's left over? Number one, is there money left over?
And a lot of people, there is not. It's
very
tight.
If there's not, then here's the other thing. maybe you need to ask for a promotion at work. So to those people that just say, it will never be better, you also are never going to get what you don't ask for.
Right.
If you feel that you have been at, like, I recently hired someone who worked for the Wall Street Journal for 20 years, and she maybe in 20 years only grew her salary 20%. Well, did you ever speak up and ask?
That's 1% a year. That's probably not great.
Especially in the cost of living in America.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a part, I think, especially as women, where we're scared to ask or we don't feel that we deserve. And so if you're saying to me, there's no money left over at the end of the month, then you need to go to your job and say, I love working here. I am a value here because these are the things I do that keep this place running. And in order for me to stay here working to afford my life, this is what I need. And can we find a way to make that happen? Step 1. 2, maybe it's a side hustle we need to pick up, right? Like there's lots of different ways to make more money. Sometimes there's a season where we're Instacart shopping or, Uber driving. I mean, I've seen lots of people do extra things to bring in more money to just support the size that their life grew to.
And it's flexible. That's the other part is some of the side hustles now are great.
Right. It doesn't have to be forever. It just has to get you over the hump of wherever you need. Now, the goal is that whatever money came in, the hard expenses, and I always talk about needs versus wants.
But that's a fine line for people too. Like you talked about food, right? And I have known people that I've known in my life and just in general who talk about not having any discretionary funds, but they're ordering DoorDash every day. And it's like, no, you can't cry poor when you have Starbucks in your hand.
Exactly.
Right? Like you have to modulate your income
so
and your expenses.
On the needs versus wants list are our true expenses. So like groceries for the house to feed the children, are we doing that in the most cost-effective way to have extra money left over to have the fun? That might be something we have to play with and change if we're not.
But that's the helplessness, I think. And I've been there myself where you just feel like nothing can change or my job is not going to give me more money. And one of the biggest discussions, and you and I had this in therapy, was maybe your job is the problem.
Maybe your job is the problem.
It's the wrong job, or maybe you have more potential. And I've worked with quite a few people that I've coached through the entrepreneurial process. And it's so wonderful because you say, maybe there's something else for me, but then you actually look for something else. And I think the problem is that people get very stuck in their beliefs about money and their job and all these things.
Well, and fear.
Yeah.
We're very, very, my husband worked at the same job for 18 years. When we decided to move out of New Jersey, we moved to Florida almost 3 years ago. He had to get a new job in order for us to do that. And boy, was that scary.
It's horrifying. Yeah.
It's horrifying. You've gone and you've excelled in one place for 18 years. Why the heck would you go and change that?
But it can be a trap for people. The people will stay because they fear change. And to me, when I think about money and the people I talk to, I always think about the fact that people create sort of this prison for themselves is, well, this is the best I can do.
Right.
And that's not the mindset we want to share here today.
No, absolutely not. And like, if you can dream it, you can do it. I'm a firm believer in that. And you've watched me every step of the way. Like I was a helpless twin mother, rattled with anxiety, working, for $20,000 a year that I grew to a full-time position. And then I saw my value at the job I was going to. And my boss said, you're going to have to go backwards to go forwards, Diana. And I basically just said, well, F you, I'm out. I'm going to go figure this out myself and do better. And so.
But you had an internal process there that was pretty remarkable. And I think it's worth sharing in this conversation was you had the process of this person says, this is all I can do.
I did.
And you knew in the back of your mind that there was more for you, but you needed somebody to say, there's more for you. What do you think that is that we can't always recognize that?
Oh, that is such a good point, Deb. Yeah. Really good point.
You knew it was there, but you weren't shining the light
there. And because I can remember I have a flashback that I can flash myself back to at my apartment in college where I'm making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to pack to school for the day of dance class.
That's what we ate.
Right? Peanut butter and jelly and whatever snacks I threw in my bag. And I just remember in that moment thinking, I am going to have an extraordinary life. And I was like 20. And if you had asked me then, that would have been a career on Broadway. And then I would have followed it up with like a dance studio. I was going to be an entrepreneur. I was going to own a dance studio and help kids do exactly what I did. And that's what it would have been. And when I met you further down the line, 15 years later, probably, with these two little kids, and I wasn't a dancer anymore. And I felt in this place of like, what the F? This is it?
Yeah.
I did like all the exciting things that happened to us as young people. Got engaged, got married. I had the kids.
And then
we
now
bought the
what?
full-size house.
Right.
Well, like now what? Okay, I'm working this job. It's like this guy is telling me that, that I work for. He's telling me I'm just still going to keep making as much as I'm making. I'm not capable of doing X, Y, and Z. Only he can do that part. I can't even learn that part. Only he can do that part.
Which we understand now was a protection of his own.
Of his own.
Which we get. That's why I say the job sometimes has to change, because there's a person above you who doesn't want you to get bigger.
Right. Because that would impact them and their business, which is exactly what happened when I quit my job. But for me, it was like so many things going on at once, like, and the therapy piece was you mirroring back to me saying the things that I wanted for my life, and you just being a mirror of going, well, okay, so what's going on in your life?
Why can't you?
And why can't you? What would need to change for you to have that life? What would you need to do for you to do the thing you want to do? And then for me to step out of fear and say, I'm just going to go do it. I'm just going to go try. What's the worst that happens? I'll just go get another job. Sometimes I have to take myself all the way to the worst possible thing that can happen, which I think is very normal in people that have anxiety.
Sure.
We have to go, and I still do it today. What is the worst possible thing that can happen? My business that you just said employed 16 people fails. It dumpster fire burns. Okay.
And what would you do?
What would I do? I would take the 5 or 6 clients that I know and I like, and I will just work with them, and I will make enough money to feed my family, and I'll rebuild from there. It will be okay.
And that is the biggest tactic that can be most effective for people that have chronic anxiety in mitigating sort of this fear about growth, is being able to say, what's the worst that can happen if I took this leap?
Right.
And always knowing that you're going to be okay no matter what. And I think money steals that from us, because when we go up and down in money, there's a panic that sets in that says, I'm not going to be okay. I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. I'm going to lose my car. And that's very hard to mitigate, because sometimes it is a brick wall. So where is a good starting point if someone's listening and they're saying, I'm not going to be able to change my job and I'm really just kind of breaking even? Where's a good starting point to at least having someone feel better about that?
Sure. So this is like become a habit of mine at either the end of December or the top of January. I always like a really quiet last end of year. I really messed that up last year, and I took my kids to Disney World at Christmas.
That is the opposite.
That was the opposite of
Diana.
I learned that the hard way. So this year I have a quiet week planned, and like go through the shit you pay for every week. Like you're on your Apple phone. I promise you have subscriptions to things that you don't even realize you're paying for, and you are. Like I can think of one right now, like don't even use it, comes out of my account every single month. Start to just audit, what are you paying for and are you using it, right? Like just start with what's under your roof right here. And are there any small little changes that you could make? We don't have any control over the top line. My job's not going to pay me anymore. I have no bandwidth to take on anything else to make more money. Okay, so then what do the expenses look like? And are there places, number one, that is just like we would say in business, fluff that we could easily cut out that we wouldn't even miss. We're like, do we really need the Hulu subscription, or could we save the $12? Because that $12 adds up. Like we could, whatever it is. Are there places where we could just like trim the fat a little bit, not enough that we feel like we're suffering, but enough that like we're not really using it anyway? That's number one. Number two is give yourself grace. Sometimes you're in a season where it is hard. Guess what? It is hard. And you know what? Like I had this conversation with a client recently, is going through a divorce. And it's like, guess what? You are going to have to rack up some credit card debt right now, because you are not in a place where you have enough money to be able to afford all the things you need to afford. And now you have been cut off from money from your partner, and it's not being helpful. So know that we are strategically spending on this credit card, paying the minimum, because we know on the other side, it's going to get better.
Right.
We're going to make money, and then we were going to have a plan to attack that. So carrying credit card debt isn't a terrible thing. What's terrible is when we ignore the fact and we ignore the reality of our financial situation, and that we're not actively working to say, I am safe and secure, I will be okay, and that this is my plan to get out of this when this X event that's currently going on is over. You know what I mean?
But that's that hope that you were talking about, like that belief is my life is going to be extraordinary. And I think what money does is it shuts people down and makes them feel trapped. So I think it's really important to keep that hope alive and say, this is the moment that I am in, right? I'm
Right.
going to get the credit card debt right now, but that is not going to be the rest of my
That's going to be
life.
my whole life story.
Right.
It's just a right now.
But I think that's the message I would want listeners to really get from you and from this conversation, is that there are so many different kinds of moments, but the hope is the thing that takes you to the success, even when the evidence in front of you is not always hopeful.
Yep.
And I always say that we can carry a heavy thing for a short time.
Yep.
I remember going through grad school and finishing my PhD, and I had 2 full-time jobs and was in school full-time and trying to do all of that. And it was awful. And I look back and I'm like, oh my God, that was so horrible. How did I even do that?
Right.
And then I think, no, because I knew that it was finite. So every financial situation you're in is a snapshot in a moment,
Right.
but it certainly could change with just a small shift.
With a small shift.
Mhm.
And it always does. If you think back 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, I promise you your financial situation in that snapshot is different every single time. And it will be in the next 5 years. But also your actions have to align with what you want for your life.
Mhm.
And that also is that piece of hope and resilience of saying, these are my circumstances. And even though these are my circumstances, I'm still going to show up and do what I need to do to keep moving the ball forward to make this better.
Small changes and understanding the script that's running in your head from probably your childhood
Right.
about money. Because I know so many people in my work where their lives are very different than the lives they came up in.
Mhm.
Sometimes worse and sometimes better. And there's always that catching up with yourself moment.
Yeah.
We've talked about
Yeah.
that, where sometimes I'll have to remind you, Diana, you're doing great. And you're going, no, I'm lost in this and that, and this isn't right, and I need this, and this isn't working. And it's like, well, no, but back up for a minute.
Right.
You're doing great. You're here. You're moving forward. It's not going the way you want it to go. So
I-
I think that's that
I had
reminder.
that today, actually.
Did
so
you?
I'm here visiting from Florida. And I scheduled this podcast with Deb, which I was really excited
Yeah.
to do. And in my travels here, I drove past my old house in New Jersey.
Wow. How did that feel?
And as I was, because always I'm like, am I going to have like some emotional reaction to this house that we left? Like we left our whole life in New Jersey and made a new life in Florida, and we love our life in Florida. But every time I come back, I'm always worried, like, will there be a piece of me that is like, oh, I shouldn't have done that?
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
And this morning, as I like drove past and I looked and I was like, oh, don't miss that house at all, man. Not 0%.
Not
0%.
on this cold New Jersey day.
I
Yeah.
don't miss that house.
Yeah.
But so much, like so much comes up around my life and what happened in that house and, all sorts of things. And to look backwards and go, I've been now almost 3 years in Florida, and go look at and I feel very stressed out. I feel very overwhelmed in my current season of entrepreneurship and being a mom and all the things, to still go, look how far I've come.
Right.
Even when it feels really hard right now on the inside. On the outside, to anyone else looking at me, I'm freaking killing it. On the inside, it feels very hard for me right now. But I had that perspective just this morning of like, wow, look how far you've come. And I encourage anybody listening to do the same. Just look back 12 months. What happened? Are there things you can, at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, that you can applaud yourself for? What are new things that you did in 2025 that you never did before? Celebrate those.
And I love the posts that are coming out now with the new year coming, where people are like, you don't have to show your highlight reel from the year. What did you survive this year? And I love that.
What
it
did
was
you
like,
survive
what was the
this
good
year?
thing that came out of this?
Or what am I not bringing into 26? Like, oh, I'm not tolerating that behavior from that person that's driving me crazy. That ain't coming into 26. Nope.
Yeah.
Not
I
doing that
think
one.
the no's are more important than the yeses when we think about our next year. Is what is it that I'm not? And we're actually doing an episode for the new year where it's going to be, what are the no's for next year? What are the things you're going to say no to? Because how is it that you you don't become at the mercy of everything. And I think
Right.
that's what money does, is it says, I can't do that. I don't have the money, or I don't have that choice, or I have to do this. And one of the really fun things about sort of my job is I get to help people see beyond that mindset of, you can have a coping skill that doesn't cost you any money.
Yes.
And that's one thing people don't realize. Well, I can't do anything. I'm broke.
Right.
Okay, well, guess what? You can have
Can
a
you-
list of all the things.
Right. Like, can you go take a walk around the block? Because I
Yes.
promise you it's going to help
It
your,
is going to
your
help.
mental health more
Yes.
than anything, than
Yes.
any Amazon shopping ever will.
Right. And I think that's the idea, is that everybody kind of needs to have that mental list of, yes, when I have money, if I had an extra $20, this is what I would do. But on the times I don't have money, I'm not going to feel trapped by that.
No.
You know, that you can go to the bookstore and you can pick a book off the shelf and you can sit and read it, and nobody gives you a hard time.
Go to the library and take it home for free and return it.
Yes.
Still free.
Yes. Even
Free
better.
book.
Even better. Yeah. Free book. But I think it's the idea that I think we get in the mindset that money is our ticket to everything. And money is not about happiness. Money buys choices.
And I
It
want
does.
to talk about this on the opposite side.
Okay.
Because I work with some higher wealth individuals. And a current theme, and I don't know if you see this on your side, is, well, if we just make it to the vacation in Baja Mar, we will be happy.
Right.
When the
Right.
things under the roof, right? We're making plenty of money. Money is not a hard thing in this household. We've got overflowing amounts of money, but the household is miserable.
Yes.
But if we can just buy the next car, or we can just get to the next vacation, then we will all be happy. Ooh, that's a bad one.
That's how bad
things-
marriages perpetuate.
Right, because
Right?
things don't actually, like, okay, does money buy us things? Yes. Does money provide us opportunity? Yes. But also, that is not the root of our happiness. We have to be happy on the inside first. You can be a very happy person and personally fulfilled poor. You can. It's possible.
I've seen it. I have seen, and I think I've talked about this before in the podcast, is I have seen people with very little money have these beautiful households. People with one income where mom stays home, and they have this beautiful life because mom said, I'm going to stay home and be with my kids because that's what I want, and it works for our family. And we're going to live on this $40,000 a year, and we're going to have a great life. And no, they're not out doing the things that a lot of people are doing, but they're sort of brand of happiness is being achieved. And that's sort of a money angle I want us to think about is there an amount of money that buys you the brand of happiness that you want? And I always say it's about security. I know
Right.
for me, there's no amount of money when I'm going to go like, oh, I'm happy.
I
and
made
it's
it,
great, and I
right?
made
Like,
it.
no.
Because there's always going to be something.
Right.
But to me, the marker is, when will I feel secure?
When do I feel safe?
And I don't know what that number is. And
Right.
I know I'm not at it even close, but I think that's what I want us to realize, is that money is an emotional safety thing for a lot of us. And I think that we have to be really serious about considering that if you are not feeling emotionally safe and secure in your life because you don't have enough money, then there is a decision there,
Right.
a big one,
Right.
whatever it is.
Whatever it is, but only you can dig into it and figure it out and then
Mhm.
sort out the finances to align. You taught me this. I can design my life to be however I want.
Mhm.
My favorite life. I get to be the architect of that. And the money piece comes right along with it. It all has to work together. We got to
Right.
bring, we got to try to bring in more than we spend out. That's the plan. Doesn't always happen. But you are able to design it, and at any time you're not stuck. You have the ability to change, even if it's little tiny changes.
Right. But it's also about what you're willing to give for what you're willing to get. And this is the equation I struggle with patients sometimes, is I'll have people that'll say, I don't like my life. I'm not getting what I need, but you're working part-time and you like your time.
Right.
So that's a great thing.
And there's a value to your
Yes.
time.
Oh, believe me, I get that one.
Yeah.
Part-time sounds lovely. It's never going to happen. But it's the idea that, yeah, you make these bargains all the time and you don't even realize that you're doing it.
Right.
And I know so many entrepreneurs and so many people like us that are kind of like doing the hustle and really doing something that's a big risk. And it takes a whole different kind of personality to do it. But I think it's because I want more
Right.
in security. I want more in the way I want my life to be. And I'm willing to do the extra work for that. So for me, that's my value system. Now I
Right.
sacrifice time, but I'm only willing to do that for a little bit, but I'm willing to do it.
Right.
So when you think about it, it's really money is about values, isn't it? How
It
much are you
is.
going to put in to get what you want?
Right. And I think a really simple exercise of that is, and if you haven't done values work, to anyone listening, there's a great book called Black Sheep by Brant Mansour that will literally, and he has a free tool that will literally, like online, like you fill out a bunch of stuff and then it spits out what your values are.
Oh, wow. That's fun.
It's amazing.
I'm
Go
looking
find the
that
book.
one up. Yeah.
And so I always go back to, what are my 5 core values? For me, they are growth, surpriser.
Yeah. No, that one.
Integrity, authenticity, family, connection. Those are my 5. And so what I do day by day, and listen, I'm not the best. I try, is to go, are my actions lining up to my values?
Right.
And if they're not, why aren't they? And what do I need to fix inside of my life to make sure that they are? Because ultimately, if I'm living my life by my values, then I'm happy. So what needs to give? And let me tell you what, that meant canceling a vacation to Aruba this year. I had the money to go, but it wasn't hitting my values.
Right.
Wasn't there. And nope, we didn't go because we needed some family connection time in our own house under our own roof that wasn't somewhere else.
Right. With just
the core
that
4.
core 4. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you get to play with that. That's kind of the fun of being alive and being a person, right? Is that you get to decide and you get to rearrange it to whatever makes you feel good, even in a hard season.
One of the things that you do, which I love, is you talk about rich girl mentality. And I love this because there is such a boom right now in us talking about women and money, right? Is that we all care about money, women, men, everybody. But I think especially with the empowerment going on around women and sort of equality with money, I love the idea that there's a rich girl attitude and it's not really about money entirely. So share that a little bit.
Yeah. So I launched this whole rich girl thing at the top of 24. So we're rounding out 2 years now. And rich to me, like a rich girl mindset to me is one, being aware, being proactive versus reactive to your money, all of the ways, right? And also emotionally aware. And the other part of it is not tying our net worth to our self-worth. That is the most important part of the rich girl mentality, because when we emotionally attach ourselves to the number in our bank account or the amount of debt we have, it immediately kills our self-confidence, our self-esteem. We feel like crap about ourselves, or it may not, right? You might have had a great year and you're like, I'm on top of the world, things are great, but my marriage is falling apart and my kids need me and who knows what else, right? So just trying to have the balance in a rich girl mentality of, am I happy and am I aware? As long as I'm aware of what's going on and I have a plan for it and I'm happy in my life, I'm good. I'm safe. I'm secure. I'm in the rich girl mentality.
That's beautiful, because I think that goes right to the heart of perception and social media and all of the things where everybody's on there showing the expensive makeup that they use or showing their Birkin bag. And to me, that is such a turnoff because it's not real.
It's not
being
real.
rich is not about having a $40,000 bag.
It's not about the things.
Right. And I went through this here so hard when I was building this business in the beginning, because we've only been here a little over 2 years, and the 2 years has been just every entrepreneurial nightmare. And we're doing great. We're doing great. But I think there's that starting a new business thing, and starting a new business where there's so many factors involved and so many things. And I remember people would say, and they'd come to the building and they'd be like, it's so beautiful and it's so wonderful and good for you. And inside of me, I'm like, this isn't good. This is exhausting. This is awful. This is terrible. And it took away the ability to enjoy what I had achieved and what I had done, because I was looking at the bank account and going,
I'm stressed out.
I don't have enough money. And that means I'm not doing a good job.
Right.
And it took me a long time to go, oh, I'm building. Oh, this is going to get better.
Yeah.
This is sort of the middle of where I'm going. And I think that's what rich girl mentality, why I love this, is because it's recognizing that like I have what I need. And look, I'm really good and I'm doing everything to get myself where I want to be.
Right.
But that's a process and you can be the rich girl in the meantime.
You
And
can.
I love that so much.
You can. And just really disassociating your net worth with your self-worth.
Right.
Period. Like completely disassociate them because they are not related and we make them extremely related.
Think about it in terms of the phases that you went through in your life, right? When you came to me and all you were was a mom. Everything was mom, mom, mom. And it was really hard. You had two little babies, you were working, and all of a sudden our identity can shrink to one thing very quickly.
Yeah.
At that point with twins, you were a mom and that was your
that was
job,
it.
right? And I think those are phases of our
Yeah.
life. And now you're still a mom and that's a great big part of who you are. But I also think that our identities do get bigger and smaller, but what can't change is the way that we feel about ourselves in that moment. So paying attention to money, we're not just talking to people that have $100,000 in the bank. I'm talking to people that have, $10,000 in credit card debt.
College kids out there too that are listening, that it's like
Mhm.
start paying attention now as you enter the real world, because you can make a lot. Like for me, I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, and guess what? You're gonna make the mistakes and you're
Mhm.
gonna learn from them and you will be better because of them, and it's okay to fail forward, right? But the more proactive you can be and the more aware you can be to your financial situation, stop burying your head in the sand away from it, ignoring the problem, stuffing it down further and further, because it's going to just keep shooting back up at you in all different ways.
Right. But I think it feeds that sense of I don't have control. There's nothing I can do about it. And I think that is the central factor that I see in people with money, is the belief that the world has done this to them. And that's a hard switch to make. And I would ask everybody listening, how much are you looking at what's outside of you and saying, this is terrible. This happens to me. This keeps happening to me. And as soon as you switch that into, what am I connecting to? What are my values?
Right.
How do I get to be the rich girl I want to be? And what is it inside of me that I need to look at? Because yeah, there are factors, there are economic factors, and there's a lot going on out there with student loans, and there's a lot of reasons why it's so hard.
To you that you had no control over as a
Right.
child. You bring that shit with you into your
It
adult life.
travels. It
Promise.
travels. All of it's there. And I think that's why I love therapy so much. And I love that we're talking about this in conjunction with that, because therapy will tell you that you have value inherently. You are worth something no matter what. Now let's find all the things that you need to line up so that you can remember that on your own.
Yes.
And you are doing it, girl. You are killing it. And I am so thrilled with everything that you have done. I mean, you have come from someone who was more focused on anxiety and survival to someone now who is, like you said, failing forward, because you are trying so many different things and not failing, but still going in different directions. And every time you go in a different direction, I hear you making learning from it.
Big time.
And growth from it.
Big
and when
time.
you hit that obstacle of, I think I might need a line of credit, but I don't want that. I can't handle that. You go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. What part of me is saying that? And what's the reality here, right?
Yeah. And guess what? The reality to all of you out there building a business is most businesses are not built on people's savings accounts, period.
Yeah, that was a hard lesson.
Big corporations,
Mhm.
right? Like look at Wawa. Let's just use Wawa. Do you think Wawa's using the CEO's money? No, the CEO doesn't even own Wawa, first of all. It's private equity money. It's, you know what I mean? Like, so like when you come back down to like small business, real world, it's really normal to borrow money, other people's money, to use to fund your business endeavor. That's actually a very normal thing. I didn't normalize it until this year, 5 years into business. So that's why I just really want to give that out there.
Bit of a struggle.
It's really, really normal to get a loan from the SBA. They will back it 50%. I just learned, actually, where you'd only have to pay 50% back if you went out of business. That's not
wow.
There's not much risk there.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah.
And so debt's okay too. Just have a plan.
And if you look at the average income of most Americans, most people are not in the stratosphere, right? So we have to get very creative with how do we make the most of what we have? How do we make good decisions around it? And how do we not stigmatize ourselves about money?
Yep.
So thank you so much for being here. This
Thank you
was
for having me.
wonderful. And thank you for flying in.
Of course.
And I would like to put it out there to anybody listening that if I know that Diana comes to New Jersey once in a while, so we may have her back. So if anyone has any questions about money or anything they would like to pose to you, I would love people to submit those, any questions, ideas, any topics, so that the next time that you come, we can kind of address maybe specific concerns and questions.
I would love that.
All right. So thank you, my sunshines, for being here with us today. And thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
And we will see you next time. Bye.